I'll explain the amendment really briefly. It does two things. First off, when we left the Senate floor, Senator Evers added a very good amendment, which basically said that the surveys could go to the parents with the children before they were administered. In meeting with some parents who had concerns in Orleans Parish regarding the bill, they said that they would prefer something more robust than that. They want to be able to have a dialogue with the school that's offering the survey. So instead of simply sending the survey home, we're requiring that if you're going to administer the survey, before you administer it, you have to have a public meeting where concerned parents can come in, they can see the survey, they can get input on the survey, and at any time they can opt their child out the survey. So this amendment is actually more robust than the amendment that came on the floor, and it's another effort to make sure that we are not interfering with parents having the ability to determine what their kids get to deal with or not deal with. Additionally, that last bit of language regarding public records requests was to further cement the fact that none of this data is ever subject to being mined or anything else. So those two amendments strengthen the bill, make it it gives more deference to parents than previously as far as being able to opt their kids out if they so choose, requests, mandates a public dialogue, and basically improves the bill. That's what the amendments do.
Okay. Representative Edwards on the amendments? Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Morrell, the survey that you're talking about is, well, first of all, is there a particular survey? You know, because the one that we're familiar with, having heard bills previously, they're the Centers for Disease Control, I believe.
I believe we have someone who's here for information who can provide information on what kind of survey it would be. I'm not. Yeah. I'm not someone in the survey business, but that person can be brought up right now if you'd like to talk to them.
Well, I would, because the survey I'm most familiar with is the CDC survey, and
right.
and I think that it's available online to people who want to get a look at it, whether or not they want to go to these meetings. But I'm not certain about that. We can ask Ms. Bindley if she's the one.
Erin Bindley with the Department of Education. It is the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that is administered as part of a CDC grant that the state of Louisiana has. I'm not sure if the survey is online, but we can check with staff and see if it's there.
So that is the survey that we're talking about administering. Okay, thank you very much. That answers my question.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions on the amendments? Okay, is there any objection to the adoption of the amendments? Seeing they're hearing them, then those amendments are adopted. Okay. In support and would like to speak is Julie Schwam. I hope I pronounced that. And she waves. Okay. In support and do not want to speak is Deborah Hawkins, Orleans Parish, and Steer, National Association of Social Workers, Sabrina Noah, Louisiana State Medical Society, Jennifer Morosky, Louisiana State Medical Society, Dr. Rose Peterson, East Bank Collaborative Charter Schools, Telly Medina, OPSB, and D.W. Hunt. All of those are in support and would not like to speak. Okay, in opposition and would like to speak, Leslie Ellison, and also Nita Wilson, hope I pronounced that Nita Wilson, and also Kathleen Benfield. All of those are in opposition, would like to speak.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Education Committee. My name is Leslie Ellison. I live in New Orleans, Louisiana. One thing that you asked about the survey, Mr. Edwards, I just want to read some of the questions from the survey. And this is from the Center for Disease Control. Which of the following best describe you? Heterosexual, straight, B, gay or lesbian, C, bisexual, D, not sure. Have you ever had sexual intercourse, yes or no? During your life, with whom have you had sexual contact? A, I have never had sexual contact. B, females. C, males. D, females and males. How old were you? And it asked that question. During your life, with how many partners did you have? I've never had sexual intercourse, 1, 2, etc., etc. They continue with all of the various questions. The bill does not state at what age will these students take this survey. It doesn't state that. The bill does not go into will they send it out or be mailed under the guise of a health survey to the parents and have the parents sign off on, indicating that they would allow their child to be surveyed by under the guise of a health survey. So I would like to submit the questions to the record by the Center for Disease Control that I pulled off the internet. And some people may have found those questions being offensive and embarrassing or even humiliating. Imagine your child, or imagine a child receiving these questions. A child can be of the age of 8 years old receiving these questions. So I would ask that you would vote against Senate Bill 31. Thank you.
Ma'am.
Good morning, committee members. I'm asking you all to please see this bill for what it is and for what it appears to be, and to develop a strong resistance to this bill in light of what it is. Senate Bill 31 has no positive, beneficial goals to children in any form or fashion, and we know this because it discusses addressing risks, and we all know that risks pose dangers, extreme dangers. And when we talk about surveying, quizzing, or polling children, most surveys are given with the hope that people will engage in a particular act at a greater or even a lesser level. We know that surveys can be slanted, they can post subliminal messages, and they can implant preconceived thoughts and verbal suggestions into the mind of a child that might foster dangerous exploration. At the end of the day, when we talk about risk, we all have risk in life. You know, someone who wants to preserve their wealth, they're not going to go and gamble all of their wealth away. Someone who wants to protect the innocence of their children, they're not going to relinquish their parental authority to a school to address or to issue surveys. Whether or not a board meeting is called, it's not right to survey children on matters of sexuality, of sexual preference, of sexual orientation, of sex in any manner. I have a 5-year-old niece and a 13-year-old nephew, and under no circumstance is their mother or our family in support of any school, of any teacher issuing a survey. When we look at the news, we see where a teacher of the year, someone who was trusted in the community, was recently charged with 30 counts of having sexual relations with children. But we want to issue surveys to our children. And so my heart's desire is that Senator Morrell, who represents my community, who I recently had the opportunity to speak with at a town hall meeting, who told me that if I have any needs or any questions to call his office. And while I haven't had the opportunity to talk to him one-on-one, I'm hoping that he will pull this bill, and I'm hoping that the committee members will protect children and not vote in support of issuing them surveys, polls, or quizzes on sexual matters. Thank you.
Just before you speak, ma'am, could you identify yourself?
Nayita Wilson.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Acting Chairman, and good morning, members. My name is Kathleen Benfield, and I'm representing the Louisiana Family Forum. First, I would like to echo the things that the other two ladies have said. I agree 100%. But I'd like to revisit this issue from another perspective. The first thing is that we're told that the stated purpose of this bill is to allow students to take the CDC Youth Risk Behavior Survey, YBRS. The first thing is that nothing in the bill limits the questions or the surveys to the CDC survey. The CDC survey is given every 2 years to students in schools, and is given in both middle schools and high schools. It's an extensive survey that I'm going to discuss with you in just a moment. But the states can actually modify the survey and can change some of the questions. So, for example, in Massachusetts, parents have gone ballistic over some of the questions that were added to the sexual portion that Ms. Ellison referred to. These included questions about the actual sexual practices and what type of, well, I can't even say it publicly exactly what the questions were, but these are questions that are given to our children. Nothing limits the questions that can be asked with this bill, and nothing limits who and where these questions can come from. The bill does not limit it to the CDC survey. But let's talk a little bit about the CDC survey. This survey is very, very extensive, and I'm not sure if this legislature has ever been involved in approval of the Education Department actually administering this survey. Some of the other questions that are asked that don't deal with sex are things like, how many days did you carry a weapon? How many days did you carry a gun? Remember the gun debate you had on the floor yesterday? Some of the representatives were shocked and did not even want children to be taught safety about guns in school because they felt like children shouldn't be exposed to issues related to guns. Did you ever seriously consider attempting suicide? Did you make a plan to commit suicide? Did you attempt suicide? Did you use marijuana? Have you used heroin? These questions are likely to cause a child to believe that if he is not doing these things or participating in some of the sexual practices that Ms. Ellison testified about, that something's wrong with them. Also, this survey is totally unscientific. The schools self-select who are going to be those to whom the survey is administered, and the students, there's no requirement that they answer the questions honestly, and children may even, some of these about did you carry a weapon, knowing that certain behavior is illegal, may not even want to give correct and accurate answers. These also, why are we doing these surveys, and especially why are we adding on the sexual component? Louisiana has been administering the Youth Risk Survey Behavior Survey, but the sexual portion was forbidden by Louisiana law, and for good reason. So why are we adding this on? Well, some would say, well, we need to know what kids are doing. But really what the point is it's agenda-driven. It's agenda-driven to promote sex education, and it's agenda-driven to promote funding for sex education. I mean, let's just be frank about it, because that's the only, I can't think of any other reason why it would be added. All right, so I think you should revisit, it's my opinion, and I would request that you revisit or visit for the first time the entire survey, and what is the advisability of asking kids about whether they want to commit suicide or carry a gun, or do their parents text and drive? That's another question. All of these intrusive questions that we and the public has no right to be asking of the children. And then finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about the amendments and some of the things. Number one is, I think that if those amendments would be successful and if the bill passes, that no child would be allowed to take the survey unless the parent has come to some public meeting and been able to review. So it should be opt-in, not opt-out. We can't take a chance that some letter went home and the parent missed it, and now the kid is being offered these intrusive questions with no knowledge on the part of the parent. So it should be opt-in, and only if the parent has attended one of these public sessions. And then the final thing I want to offer is, suppose the kid does say, I'm thinking about committing suicide, or I'm having sex, or I'm bisexual, or I am homosexual. The parents should be able to see a copy of the child's answers, because the parents are the ones that are most responsible for dealing with issues as to, does the child use marijuana? Does the child carry a gun? Does the child think about committing suicide? Is the child having sex? If we're so concerned about the parents being involved in this, don't you think the parents should be able to see what the results of the survey were for these children? Because they're the most, not the state of Louisiana, not the public school system of Louisiana, are responsible and required by state law to provide for their children's well-being. So I object to the survey as a whole. I'd appreciate it if you would revisit that at a further time. But the time being, I certainly believe that no new questions should be added, and that these intrusive data mining questions should not be added on and asked of our children in public schools. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank all of you for coming out this morning.
Thank you.
Miss Sandy McDade. And while Ms. McDade is coming, in opposition, but would not like to speak, Celeste V. Thomas and Rob Tasman, the chair, back in the chair.
My name is Sandy McDade. I represent Louisiana Power Coalition and Eagle Forum. LPC is a statewide organization. Eagle Forum is a national organization. We've studied this issue for many, many years. It's not something we woke up and discovered yesterday. I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about sex education. It's an issue that this body has had to deal with over the last 30 or 40 years, constantly. And I will not bore you or embarrass myself by reading the survey questions over and over again, but I will say this, that in the survey, if there are some sexual practices the children don't understand, it's quite frankly explained to them in parentheses so they will understand it. I don't want my third grade grandchild knowing some of these things. I think there are things that he doesn't need to know. And various experts have told us that there is a latency period for children between about the ages up to about 8 or 9, 10 years old, where these are issues that don't work well in their heads. These are times when young people learn, but issues regarding sex are things that are not, they don't work with young people. And the experts, doctors, PhDs have told us don't fill children's heads with issues about sex because they don't deal well with it. They don't work well with it. It's not the time when they're ready for it. Third grade, children don't need to be bombarded with sexual questions. They don't have to have somebody ask them if they're thinking about committing suicide. And by the way, I agree with Ms. Benefield's suggestion that if this bill does go forward, it must be an opt-in, not an opt-out. Because to opt in, that means mom and dad absolutely know what their child is getting into. And opt-out means just sign a form, send it in. You don't really know what the child is about to do, what's about to be asked of your child. And quite frankly, this is an anonymous survey. So if a child answers on that survey, yes, I'm thinking about suicide, that's a cry for help. But it's an anonymous survey. So we're not going to look at it. We're not going to answer that cry for help. This whole concept is to implement liberal sex education in our schools, starting perhaps in New Orleans. As said the other day, I think New Orleans children are every bit as important as Shreveport children, Bossier children, Monroe children, Baton Rouge children, Lafayette, Lake Charles. So I'm asking you to say no to this sex survey, to the survey about drugs, survey about a child's personal behavior, things that should be dealt with the child and his family, his parents. The school has no right putting ideas into a child's head and asking a child personal questions about himself and his family practices. Please vote no on Senate Bill 31 and its companion. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Would provide information and is requesting to speak is Caitlin Marciano. I hope I pronounced that correct. Is Caitlin here? Caitlin? Okay, thank you, ma'am. In opposition, who does not want to speak, is Rob Tasman, Louisiana Conference of Catholic Bishops, and Celeste Thomas. They are in opposition, would not like to speak. There are one question, Representative Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Based on some of the testimony that we've heard that I happen to agree with, I would like to offer an amendment that would limit the survey to the CDC Youth Risk Behavior Survey and also limit the students to which it can be administered to high school students only.
I'm fine with that amendment.
I'm sorry?
I'm completely fine with that amendment.
Okay, Representative Edwards has offered an amendment that Senator Morrell, would you want to read the amendment? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the amendment offered by Representative Edwards to Senate Bill 31 is as follows. On page 2, line 7, after students and before regarding, insert in grades 9 through 12. Amendment number 2, on page 2, at the end of line 7, after health, insert the only survey that may be administered pursuant to this subparagraph is the Youth Risk Behavior Survey developed by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Okay.
Can we speak to those amendments, please, sir?
No, your testimony is concluded, and I'm in closing any offered amendment. So you can't just come to the table and just start talking.
Yeah, he's in closing, and I'm sorry, but thank you. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Representative Edwards has offered up an amendment. Is there any objection to the adoption of the amendment? Okay. Representative Burns.
Okay.
You need to get a little closer to the microphone, please.
I'm sorry. Does your amendment address the opt-in? Still, it's just the age group. Is that correct?
Yes, it does not include an opt-in provision. It just includes the age and the.
Okay.
Representative Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It does not make any changes with respect to whether it's opt-in or opt-out. It's just a question. It make changes that the only survey that's authorized hereby would be the CDC Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and that it can only be administered to high school students, so we don't have to worry about third graders or fourth graders or fifth graders. So those are the two changes made by the amendments that I offered.
Okay. There are no further questions on the amendment. Is any objection to the adoption of the amendment? Seeing they're hearing that those amendments are adopted. Representative Bishop.
I'd like to move favorable.
Okay. Senator Morrell, if you'd like to close on your bill.
Yeah, I'd like to address a couple of things. The first is that in the state of Louisiana, we already give the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. We just omit all the questions in regards to sexual behavior. Now, they tell you, read the whole survey, read this whole terrible survey. First off, the survey in the state of Louisiana is only administered to high school students. It's done pursuant to a grant from the Center for Disease Control. Some of the other questions of the survey are things like, have you ever used an electronic vapor product? Do you wear a helmet when you're skateboarding? The questions in here in regards to drugs are currently being asked because we have to ascertain that behavior to see how we can do our better efforts to have a drug-free education at our schools. The survey, let me read the heading of the survey. This is really important that you guys kind of, in the preamble to the survey, it says, this survey is about health behavior. It has been developed so you can tell us what may affect your health. Do not write your name on this survey. The answers you will give will be kept private. No one will know what you write. Answer the questions based on what you really do. Completing this survey is voluntary. Whether or not you answer the questions will not affect your grade in class. If you are not comfortable answering a question, leave it blank. The implications, the allegations that have been put before you that this is trying to coerce people to give certain questions or do certain behavior is simply not true. It is basic fear-mongering. The survey is created by the Center for Disease Control. Now, many people ask me, why are you doing this bill just for New Orleans? Why are you and Representative Bishop doing this bill for New Orleans? New Orleans and Baton Rouge are the two HIV capitals of the world. Think about that for a second. I do a lot of work helping people with a variety of disabilities and disease behaviors. And I know Representative Bishop and I go the No AIDS Walk every year to try and help, people and raise awareness of AIDS. And the reason why I brought this bill, ladies and gentlemen, is because the people at that walk keep getting younger and younger. My wife was a public school teacher. She's no longer a public school teacher, but she was. And this bill is not just about risky sexual behavior. It's about basic sex education. My wife took a group of girls from a public school in New Orleans to a public pool. And she was taking them there, and they were all going there for a field trip. And several girls got in the pool, and several girls did not. And they were very upset. And she went to them. These are 8th graders. And she said, why aren't you girls getting in the pool? Why are you so upset? And they said, well, the girls that got in the pool have tampons and we have pads. And she's like, well, why is that? She said, because we've been told that if we use a tampon, we lose our virginity. That is what bills like Representative Bishop and I are trying to address. It is ridiculous that we are letting people learn sex education from scandal. While you have people sitting up here saying these questions are going to encourage people to risky behavior, kids in New Orleans, kids in the state are watching the Vampire Diaries. They're watching all these shows on network television for free that are far more suggestive and horrible than the questions in this exam. We're trying to ascertain data so that teachers can have better information to help our kids. And we want this for New Orleans because New Orleans needs it. We need your help. This is a local bill properly advertised. For those of you who've been in the legislature a while, you know what that means. When we do local bill properly advertised, that means we coming to you as a community asking for your help. The New Orleans School Board voted 5-2 in support of this bill. The New Orleans City Council voted unanimously in support of this bill. The mayor of New Orleans is in support of this bill. The delegation is in support of this bill. This is a local bill properly advertised.
Senator Morrell, let's don't lose our quorum.
Okay, well, I get the hint. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please move favorable passage as amended.
Thank you, sir. Representative Bishop moves to report Senate Bill 31 favorable with amendments. Any objection? Seeing their hearing. Okay, Representative Burns objects. Ms. Snowden, please call the roll.
Representative Bishop? Yes. Votes yes. Representative Broadwater? Representative Burns? No. Representative Carmody? Yes. Representative Edwards? Yes. Representative Hall? Yes. Representative Henry? Representative Hollis? No. Representative Ivy? Representative Jefferson? Yes. Representative Landry? Representative Leger? Representative Price? Yes. Representative Reynolds? No. Representative Richard? No. Representative Shadwin? Representative Smith?
And I'll vote yes.
Carter votes yes.
Okay, so that bill passes 7-5. So we will report Senate Bill 31 favorable.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Senator